Welcome to Neo Royal House of Pricey Cardboard. On today's episode of Commander Gameplay, we are joined by Maxime and Hugo for some more powerful EDH games. Max will be playing Brago, King Eternal. This is a combo deck looking to assemble some form of loop with Brago, Strionic Resonator, and various ETBs, closing the game with something like a Rashadan footpad to make us sacrifice all our permanents. The deck is pretty high power with tutors and counter magic, so everybody's on the lookout from the get-go. Hugo will be playing Edric, Spymaster of Trest. This is a deck similar to Yuriko and Anoan, trying to flood the board with flyers and unblockable creatures, drawing cards from Edric's ability, and closing the game with some kind of mass pump to make the creatures lethal. This is a good version of Edric, but it is not the one with a ton of extra turns. Kelly will be playing Alela, Artuful Provocator. This will be the last match we have with this version of Alela, as me and Kelly are working on quite a unique twist on this commander. This version of Alela is primarily focused on creatures with flying, trying to be less dependent on the general sticking around, so we have anthem effects on creatures and still some equipments and token boosters in the form of enchantments. Finally, I will be playing Kumena, Tyrant of Orazca. This is a Merfolk tribal list looking to get a lot of pretty low CMC Merfolks on the table, tap and untap them for value, and close the game with unblockable commander damage or straight up alpha strikes. I run a package for Merfolk to untap to get the most of this effect. Cards like Nykthos, Gilded Lotus can turn a regular turn into a pretty explosive board state. Max's opening hand contains Tribute Mage, Prophetic Prism, Dovin's Veto, Fellwarstorm, Marsh Flats, Seat of the Synod, and a basic Plains. Hugo's opening hand contains Artificer's Assistant, Merfolk Pixie, Scale Up, Knowledge Exploitation, Rampant Growth, Interland Arbor, and a basic Island. Kelly's opening hand contains Empyrean Eagle, Linvala Shield of Seagate, Warden of Vivocile, Smothering Tide, Scavenger Grounds, Polluted Delta, and a Sunken Holo. My opening hand contains Sage of Fables, Swansong, Counterspell, Heroic Intervention, Ash Barrens, Unclaimed Territory, and a Command Tower. Kelly gets to start this off, and land drops a Polluted Delta, cracking it immediately for a Prairie Stream. Max casts a turn 1 Jewel Lotus. He land drops a Plains and casts his commander, Brago, King Eternal.
My rule bursts beyond death itself.
I land drop a Command Tower and pass. Hugo land drops an island and casts Artificer's Assistant, ending turn 1. Kelly land drops Sunken Holo. Max land drops Seat of the Synod, he then casts Prophetic Prism. As we can't let him get any kind of card advantage with that start, I react with Swan Song. The artifact is countered and Max gets a bird token. He then heads into combat, sending Brago to me. Brago triggers on damage and flickers itself. For my turn, I land drop a Myriad Landscape and pass. Hugo land drops Interland Arbor and casts Merfolk Pixie. He goes to combat, sending the Artificer to Kelly for 1. Kelly land drops a Plains and casts Warden of Vivocile. Max land drops an island and casts Tribute Mage. In reaction,
je vais taper R.
Oh, Philippe!
Je fais un Basic Land Cycle.
Après ça, j'étais comme, ok, j'ai plus rien, là, j'ai juste Brago.
I Basic Land Cycle my Ash Barrens for an island. As the creature enters the battlefield, Max searches deck for Arcane Signet. For his combat step, he sends Brago to me and the bird to Kelly. Brago triggers on damage and flickers itself and the Trophy Mage. As it re-enters the battlefield, the Trophy Mage finds Azorius Signet. On my turn, I land drop an island and cast my commander, Kumena, Tyrant of Orazca.
The same power that drives the river ever onward flows through the roots and branches. To me.
Hugo land drops an island and casts his own commander, Edric, Spymaster of Trest.
She said what? No way. What after?
He gets to scry on cast from the assistant. Heading into combat, the assistant and Merfolk attack me. Edric triggers on damage for 2 cards. Kelly land drops a Plains and casts her commander, Alela, Artful Provocator.
Rankles pranks are child's play. My name's Untapful Kingdoms.
She goes to combat and sends the Warden back to Hugo. Max land drops Marsh Flats, cracking it for a basic Plains. He then casts Arcane Signet, followed by Fellwarstorm, and lastly Azorius Signet. This might seem like a simple ramped turn, but having rocks to flicker with Brago is part of his combo with Strionic Resonator, as he needs 2 mana to continue the loop. Heading into combat, Brago and the bird attack Hugo. Brago triggers on damage and flickers itself, the Tribute Mage, and the rocks. He shortcuts, announcing he will be casting Recruiter of the Guard with his new untapped mana. He then searches for Strionic Resonator and Rishadan Footpad with the ETBs. Having pretty much everything he needs to close the game on his next turn, he passes. I'll end up Interland Arbor and pass, announcing that if I play my 4th drop, we lose the game to Max. Hugo then drops a forest. We do some politicking and I agree to take Edric to enable the play against Maxim. On his combat step, Edric comes to me, while the assistant to the Marrowleaf attacks Kelly. Edric triggers on damage for 3 cards. In second main, Hugo used the Prowl cost on Knowledge Exploitation. He goes through my library, finding a casting Barrel's expertise. He returns to hand Brago, Arcane Signet, and Felwar Stone. He then gets to cast Siren Storm Tamer for free. Hugo discards to Endsize and pass. Kelly then drops a Scavenger Ground and casts Linvala's Shield of Seagate. She then casts Hyperion Eagle. Going to combat, Alela and the Warden attack Max. Edric triggers on damage for 2 cards. Max recasts Felwar Stone and Arcane Signet. He then tries to pass, but at the end step I crack my Myriad for 2 islands. I'll end up an island on my turn, and as Max did not recast Brago, I feel safer and cast Forerunner of the Heralds. Entering the battlefield, I put Mero Commerce on top of my deck. I go to combat and tap the Forerunner to make Kumena unblockable. I send my commander to Max. Edric triggers on damage and I draw a card. In second main, I cast Mero Commerce, and at the end step, the Commerce untaps my creatures. Hugo casts Rampant Growth for an island. Kelly uses this time to basic land cycle or Ash Barrens. Hugo then casts Merfolk Wind Robber, and for his combat sends the Siren and Marrowleaf to me. Edric triggers on damage. Kelly then drops a Plains and casts Smothering Tide. Alela triggers on cast and makes a fairy. Reacting to this, Max casts Mana Drain. The Tide is countered but the fairy resolves. She then casts Idol of Oblivion, making a second fairy and then tapping the idol to draw a card.
Maxime, pour cette offense, je pense que je n'ai d'autre choix que d'aller en combat.
Suite à votre dernière offense, Messire Langelier, je n'ai d'autre choix que vous crisser une rince.
Heading into combat, Alela and the Eagle attack Max, who blocks with the bird token. At his first main, Max gets 4 colorless through the mana drain. He then casts Rishadan Footpad. Hugo reacts by discarding 2 lands and casting Foil for free. Max reacts with Davin's Veto. Entering the battlefield, the Footpad trigger. I sacrifice a land, Hugo pays 2, and Kelly sacks a fairy. Max then casts Yorion Sky Nomad. Entering the battlefield, Yorion's effect goes on the stack, and Hugo reacts once again with Stifle. At the end step, I draw a card by tapping 3 untapped Merfolk. I then untap and land drop Unclaimed Territory, naming Merfolk. I cast Sage of Fables. I follow it up with Curse of Bounty, enchanting Max. Going to combat, my Forerunner goes to Max. This will trigger my curse, and when the effect is on the stack, I tap 3 Merfolks to draw a card. Max does not block and takes 5. On his turn, Hugo casts Druid Repository, a card I tell myself I need to buy every time I see it. Heading into combat, the Merfolk, Siren, Marrowleaf, and Assistant attack me. On damage, the Wind Robber triggers and mills my Black Blade Reforge. Hugo then triggers Edric, drawing 4 cards. In second main, Hugo casts Harvest Season and passes while searching for 4 basics. Kelly casts Ghostly Prison. She then activates Idol of Oblivion to draw, and follow it up with Keeper of the Accord. She heads into combat, sending Alela to Max, the Eagle to me, and the Warden to Hugo. My curse triggers on attack, and while it's on the stack, I tap 3 Merfolks to draw a card. Edric then triggers on damage for some cards. Having untapped all our non-land permanents, Kelly can retap the Idol of Oblivion for another card. She discards to Endsize and pass. Max casts Sakashima of 1,000 Faces. Reacting to the cast, Hugo casts Evacuation. I draw a card before returning all creatures to hand. Sakashima then resolves and enters as herself. Max then recasts Recruiter of the Guard. Entering the battlefield, he searches his library for Grant Abolisher. I think he's sick of us interacting with him. He then passes. Alendrop Exotic Archer.
Je suis surpris à quel point il y a des réponses dans vos decks.
Dans ce deck-là, j'ai 11 counterspells. Je peux être différent de ça des counterspells, mais c'est le seul genre de réponse que j'ai, je pense.
Moi, j'ai 2 counterspells. Abjure et counterspell. C'est tout.
I recast Forerunner of the Heralds, and entering the battlefield, I put Mero Ridgery on top of my library. I then cast my Commander, putting a +1/+1 on the Herald. I discard 2 end size and pass. Hugo casts Siren Storm Tamer. He then casts Cold Eye Silky
Help Merfolk!
Oui.
Oui.
and follow it up with Merfolk Wind Robber. He casts Artificer's Assistant and then Edric Spymaster of Trest, scrying 1. After all that, he shifts the turn to Kelly. Kelly land drops a swamp and recasts Warden of Evil's Isles and our Commander. She then casts Linvala's Shield of Seagate before discarding 2 end size and passing. Max land drops Cavern of Souls, naming Spirits, and uses it to recast Brago, King Eternal. At the end step, I draw a card by tapping 3 Merfolks before going to my turn. I cast Nilea's Intervention, where X equals 4, dealing 4 damage to all flying creatures. Kelly reacts by sacrificing Linvala to give her other creatures indestructible. Once this is done, I cast Mero Ridgery. I go to combat and send Kumena to max. The curse triggers on attack, and with the effect on the stack, I draw a card by tapping the remaining Merfolks. I then untap and max takes 3. At my end step, Hugo flashes in Spectral Sailor. And on his turn, he casts Jace's Phantasm, followed by Marileaf's Pixie. He then casts Bident of Tassa and a sneaky Blighted Agent. For his combat step, Edric attacks Max, Cold Eye attacks Kelly, and the Sailor attacks me. The curse triggers and I draw before untapping. Max blocks Edric with the Recruiter while me and Kelly take the damage. Hugo draws a bunch of cards from Edric, the Bident, and the Selkie. In second main, Hugo casts a Tout Vessel and pass. Kelly then drops a Vault of the Archangel and casts Divine Visitation. She then casts Sensei's Divining Top. Alela triggers, but the Visitation turns the fairy into a 4/4 angel with flying and vigilance. She then recasts Imperial Eagle, before activating Idol of Oblivion to draw. Going to combat, Alela goes to max and the Warden to me. The curse triggers and I draw once more. We have no block and take the damage. Edric triggers on damage and Kelly activates the Idol a second time. She discards 2 end size and pass. Max casts Grant Abolisher. Once the spell has resolved, he casts Strionic Resonator, and follow it up with Mystic Remora. I realize that I missed my window to draw with Kumena and go to my turn, shamefully. I then drop an island and cast Master of the Pearl Trident. Mero Ridgery triggers and untaps an island. I cast Sage of Fables, untapping an island again. I then cast Herald of Secret Streams. This would have been a better turn if I drew one of my mini lands or artifacts that taps for more than 1. I head into combat, sending Kumena to max and the Forerunner to Kelly. The curse triggers on attack, and reacting to that, I tap 5 Merfolks to put a +1/+1 counter on each of them, making them unblockable and Island Walk. Reacting to attackers, Max casts Teferi's Protection. Kelly then takes 11. In second main, I tap my Merfolks to put another +1/+1 counter on all of them. The commerce then untap my Merfolks at the end step. Reacting to my untap, Hugo flashes in Fairy Vandal.
Amène plus de bijoux!
On his turn, he casts Chasm Skulker. He then overloads a Scale Up. Ready for combat, the Cold Eye and Jace Phantasm attack me, while Bladed Agent attacks Kelly. Reacting to attackers, I draw 2 cards with my Merfolks.
Mais j'ai pas grand chose qui coûte 0 dans ce
Tu
deck-là.
files! Il est tellement dead! Gosh, darn!
Tu t'en viens à cause de moi, c'est moi qui ai counter la roche à max. Truqué.
Indeed, I do not support this.
I then die a terrible death. Hugo draws 12 cards, which put +1/+1 counters on the Skulker. He then drops Nikto's Shrine to Nyx and casts Fairy Seer. Entering the battlefield, he scries 2 and tries to pass the turn, but at the end step, Kelly spins the top. She then taps the top to put the top back on top, and go to her turn. She goes straight to combat, sending the Warden, Alela, an Angel, a Fairy, and the Eagle to Hugo.
Max, si tu permets, je t'enverrai juste
Il est pas là.
Ah, il est pas là encore?
Non, il peut pas. J'aurais tué Maxime sinon.
Full swing, chez Hugo!
I know, Hugo. Tu l'as dit 8 fois.
Je l'ai dit que si j'aurais pu tuer Max.
In second main, she casts Austere Command. Hugo reacts with Counter Spell. Kelly then casts Heraldic Banner, followed by Sensei's Divining Top. She activates the Idol to draw a card, and at the end step, Hugo uses Nykthos to make some blue mana. He sinks it into the Sailor to draw 3 before the Grand Abolisher phases in. Max phase back in and does not pay for the cumulative upkeep. He recasts Reshidan Footpad. Entering the battlefield, Kelly sacrifices a fairy and Hugo pays 2. Max recasts Yorion Sky Nomad. Entering the battlefield, Max gets to exile his stuff until the next end step. We go to said end step and the creatures come back. Sakashima enters as a copy of the Footpad, and Max activates the Strionic Resonator to get a third Footpad trigger. We then realize that the Grand Abolisher prevents Dredge Repository from activating, so Hugo gains back his counter and sacrifices some lands. Max then passes. Hugo casts Tishana, Voice of Thunder. Entering the battlefield, he draws 10 cards. He followed it up with Tetsuko Umizawa Fugitive. And for his Alpha Strike, sends Blighted Agent to Kelly and the rest to Max. No blockers can be declared because of Tetsuko, and before damage, Hugo casts a massive Biomass Mutation where X equals 11, taking out both remaining opponents. Well played. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. Make sure to like and subscribe to help us reach our goal of 1,000 subscribers. We are getting really close. We are also halfway through our Patreon goal of 20 to get a bonus video each month. Take care my friend, and we'll see you very soon.